Hey, okay, so I wanted to do a little technical deep dive on one of our latest implementations for um, a installation limit. So we've just introduced a limit on installations that active installations that somebody can have, and the limit is now 5. So I just wanted to kind of talk about the reasoning behind that and how you should handle this limit in your apps. So let's start at the very beginning here. So we have the nodes up here, the nodes, and inside of them they have a couple of databases um, that, or like the server where all the information lives that kind of gets shared. There's, as we've said in the past, there's one for welcomes, there's one for groups, and not, I guess they're not a couple of databases. We have one database, but there's a couple of tables. And we also have one for identity updates. And so it's kind of like the identity table where you can get information about people on the network. So we've kind of covered the welcomes and the groups in some other videos. So let's talk about identity here. So you can have 256 identity updates on a inbox. So you're like, what is the significance of 256? It's just a number that we picked. And if you think about it in the sense of there's like a ledger where it's like, hey, created an inbox ID is like your first entry. And then you have another entry that's like, oh, you added a new wallet address. And then you have another entry that's like, oh, you added a new installation. And you have another installation. And then it's like, okay, and then you remove the wallet. It's kind of like a ledger of like everything that's happening on this inbox. And so, in a distributed system, if like and then you added another wallet or added the same wallet, if I get these out of order, like if I'm trying to process something about your identity, you and I are having a conversation and I'm trying to figure out the state of your inbox. And I get this added a wallet before I get the removed a wallet, and they're for the same wallet, there needs to be a way for you to kind of replay the events. So you can be like, okay, this wallet existed and then this wallet was removed. Like this wallet is no longer a part of this identity. Even though I have this add event in here, this one comes afterwards and thus the wallet is no longer associated. So you can have 256 of these things. So this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So like this inbox right here has 7 identity updates. And once you get to 256, you have maxed out and you can't do any more to your inbox. You're logged in and you can keep using that logged in installation, but you can't, add another wallet. You can't add a new installation. You can't remove a wallet. You can't, revoke an installation, etc. So I think, 256 is a very large number. If you're looking at this list right here, you're probably like, oh, that would be impossible to get to 256. Well, for people who frequently delete their local database, think of like maybe an agent or somebody who doesn't have anything that they need to keep the state of their local database for. This number, we've had several people actually already reach this number. And so what happens when you reach this number? Well, it's not great. So the inbox ID, when you create an inbox ID, it has a nonce on it. And the nonce is kind of allows you to have an infinite amount of inbox IDs associated with, your wallet. Well, I mean, you can only have one at a time, but it allows you to kind of, infinitely. So if you're developing and you're like, oh, I don't really care about this 256 limit, you can literally just keep, rotating the nonce forever, and it'll just keep spitting out new inbox IDs for your identity. So yeah, so you reach the 256, you change the nonce, now you have a new inbox, and you've lost access to all of this. This no longer exists, and you have a new inbox ID, and your 256, identity updates kind of restarts. The big thing to note here is that if I was added to a group with this inbox ID will not have access to that group. It's a completely new inbox. So if you reach this limit, it's really bad. If it's something in production, it's something real, because you will lose all of your hard work. All of your conversations, people will no longer be able to reach you at this inbox. They'd have to reach you at this new one. That being said, if you use addresses and you're like, hey, add, add this address, this 0x address to this, to this account, it will now compile down to this inbox ID because it no longer points to this one. So if you tried to reach me at this address, it will correctly point you to the correct inbox ID. So you don't have to know my new inbox ID. You just have to know my address, and we handle making sure that the correct inbox ID gets used. So that's kind of the history here. So now let's talk about this limit of 5. Well, I guess you can probably assume why we have this limit of 5, right? Because we don't want people getting to that 256, and we don't want them getting there unknowingly. So if you add 5 installations, and error message that you have used 5 out of 5 installations, you need to revoke one before you can add another. Well, hopefully this is like an alert to you, like, oh, shoot, I'm creating a lot of installations. What am I doing that's potentially causing, this? And now you're only down to 251 of your updates instead of 256 by the time you find out that you've reached some sort of limit. So that's part of the motivation. The other motivation here is that every single active installation that you have is a member in the group. So if you think of the way MLS works, right, it's a tree, and there's a bunch of nodes in the tree, and this is how kind of membership, encryption, decryption works. So every time that you add a new installation, you add another node to this tree. So if you have 200, let's say in the extreme case, you have 256 installations, when you get added to a group, that will add 256 nodes to this tree. So that just explodes the size of the group, right? Because we're saying, I want you to have access to this group, and I want you and every single one of your installations to have access to this group. So, it's public information. I can see how many installations you have, but it's not like you're looking at that. You're not like, oh, Naomi has 10 installations. I'm not going to add her to this group. So now setting this limit to 5, you can kind of control whoever I'm adding to this group, the max amount of nodes they're going to add to this tree is 5. And that's like a manageable amount of numbers. You're not growing the group by 256 people when you're adding just one person. This also controls performance. If group sizes get really large, they can get slow. There can be issues with adding people to a group because they have to decrypt this whole tree. And the tree could be massive. If you have multiple people in the group with 256 installations, well, now you've got, a group of 500 plus people that when you only have 2 people. So that's like the other motivation is we're trying to keep group sizes reasonable and manageable, and we also want to keep group sizes manageable in the amount of people that have access to the decryption keys. A lot of these are probably dead installations, installations that you'll never be able to re-access. So you probably don't want them having access to your the decryption keys for your group. So that's the other motivation here. And so let's talk about 2 additional things. I want to talk about, well, what do you do when you hit the limit, and the 3 scenarios that kind of improve this. And I also want to talk about the question of well, what if I already have 20 installations? What happens to my account? So let's say as today, you could have 256 installations. Okay. So what happens if I log into XMTP now that I've upgraded to this version that has this limit? and I have 20 installations, what happens to my account? Well, nothing will happen to your account. We have no enforcement at the group level. You can still get added to the group with your 20 installations. You can still use whatever app you're using with your 20 installations, et cetera, et cetera. What will happen is if you log out, lose access, create a new installation, download a new app. You have your iPhone, you decide you want to put it on your iPad. Well, you're going to get an error that says you have 20 out of your limit of 5 installations. You need to revoke 15. So it'll say you need to revoke 15 installations, actually, probably 16, 16 installations to be able to add one more. So nothing will happen to your count if you have 20 right now. It'll just affect you when you try to add another one. It'll just give you a warning that you are over the limit and you'll need to revoke 16 to get to a number where you can add another one. We're also super open to feedback on this. But it's kind of the number that we've picked right now. If you think about the normal user, like, okay, they have an iPad, they have an iPhone, they have a desktop. Okay, that's 3 installations. That's probably the normal use case. Okay, maybe you have a couple of more apps that you like to use, like maybe this is app 1. Maybe you have another app and you want to have it on all 3. Well, now you're at 6. Okay, the limit is 5. So reach out to us if you're like, I have a legitimate use case where I need to have 6 installations or 10 installations and I want them all to be active. This 5 number is not hard fixed for life. It does help us grow this group size, which is very important to us. It also helps us manage, the decryption keys of people who have them, not adding somebody with a ton of installations. But I could see this number growing to 10 in the future. If we get a lot of feedback of people having legitimate use cases for larger groups. Okay, so let's finish this off with, well, what's this like? What are the scenarios where people will hit this limit? So I think there's like 3 scenarios. So there's the first scenario is okay, let's see which one we should start with. So the first scenario here is that you should try to handle in your app is I hit the logout button in the app, button. I don't know how you spell that. And I hit the logout button and I choose to delete my local database. Delete your local database, which means that you delete your encryption keys, which means that you lose access forever to this installation. So if you delete your local database, you lose access to this installation forever and you'll never be able to get it back. The next time you log in, you will make a new installation. So if a user in your app clicks the logout button and chooses to delete their local database, which deletes their encryption key and all of their key packages and everything that identifies this installation, you should also revoke the installation. So this is you're creating a dead installation here, something that can never be accessed again. So you should just revoke it and just remove it from this user's account. This requires a signature from the recovery account. And so this feels like an appropriate time to do it. Like you've taken a destructive action to delete your local database. It kind of makes sense that you're going to also revoke the installation key, which requires a signature from the recovery address. So this is like scenario 1. This would be like the happiest path ever. It's like I've made an action and I've done it. Another path is I love to delete apps. Like I'm just a delete my app kind of person. And deleting the app will inadvertently delete the local database. Well, unfortunately, in this scenario, you don't have the option to give them a revoke for the installations because they've made a very aggressive, destructive action, and there's nothing you can do about it. So now they have a dead installation because they deleted the database, and they didn't revoke the installation. So now they also have a dead installation just hanging on their account. Something they don't have access to anymore, just taking up space. It just is what it is. And so this, if you're a perpetual app deleter, it's very possible you could reach your 5 limit quickly, and have and have to revoke installations. So let's say you've reached your 5 limit because you love to delete apps, and you want to give your user an option. So they try to log in, they'll get this error that's like, hey, you've reached your limit of 5 out of 5. Well, they can't create another one to revoke installations because they don't have access to any installation to do the revoking. So then we have a new static revoke method, which allows you to statically revoke installations. Let's say all 5 of these were dead. You can just get the static method for inbox state. So there's a static method called inbox state, and you can get the list of installations for this inbox, and you can just pass the whole list in, and then you would have 0 out of 5. So you'd have 5 options, and then you could log in. So yeah, so we have 2 static methods for people who can't create a client because they're already at the limit. And they have no access to any. So then the third scenario would be, I have an iPad and an iPhone. I'm logged in on my iPhone. I go to log in on my iPad. My iPad's like, hey, you have 5 out of 5. You can't log in here. However, I'm already logged in on my iPhone. Apps should give users the ability to manage their installations from inside the app. So they should give them like a management page that'll show like all of their installations and give them the option to pick which one they want to revoke. Like, oh, I have 5 in here. I'm going to revoke this one so that I can log in on my iPad. And so once they revoke one, then they can go back to their iPad and they'll have 4, and then they can log in. So this management screen is interesting, right? Because an installation only has 2 bits of information on it from the protocol. It has an ID, which is a random byte array. It's random bytes. And then it has a date, which is the date that it was created. So not the date that it was last logged in, but the date that it was created. So if you're thinking about a user looking at this list of installations, trying to figure out which one they should revoke, because revoking is a very destructive action. If you revoke an installation, you lose access, you lose all of your messages. You don't lose your conversations, but you will lose all of your messages. So you want to be careful which ones you're choosing to revoke. Like, it'll essentially log you out. So if you're like logged in on your iPhone and you revoke your iPhone, from your iPad or whatever, okay, now your iPhone's been logged out and you lose all your messages. So when looking through this list, the ID and the date, it's like, unless you have a really good memory of like, oh, that was the day that I was at that conference and downloaded that app, so that one has to be that app. Like, you're going to have to do some like mental gymnastics to figure out what installation is associated with what thing that you did. So my recommendation would be to also store information about the installations that are associated with your app. So like, as an app developer, you probably have information, model. You'll have information of the last time that they logged in or the last time that they accessed it. And I would recommend like storing on a database for the installations that you know about, a little bit additional like metadata, so that you can give your users a kind of a better experience of like, hey, I know about these 3 installations. I don't know about these 3 installations. Like, maybe this is a different app. Maybe this is I don't know. This is managed by some other app. I don't know anything about this. So all the information you get is this, but I do know about these 3, and these were the dates that you logged in. And this is the device, this was your Android phone, and this was your iPad. And, you can give your users some more detailed information, or like of the installation, to help them make that decision of which ones they want to revoke. Okay. That cover everything. Does anyone have any questions?
I do have a non-developer question, which is the use of the word static. Like, developers would understand what static means, and I chat GPT'd it, so I think I understand. But what do you think, Naomi?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for people maybe who don't know what a static method is, so right now you have methods you call like create client, and you get a client, and you have all these actions on this client. You can call like client dot revoke, and it'll take information from the client object to use for your revoke method. And so that's like really handy if you have the client. The problem is in this scenario that you can't call client create because you're blocked because you're already at your limit. So how do you get around that? Well, you call client with a big C dot revoke. So you call it on the class itself before an object has been created from it. So this revoke method, the static revoke method, takes additional fields because it doesn't have the luxury of the already created object having some of these fields. So the static one, and we have this in our docs, like takes some additional information like the identity. Well, actually, it doesn't take the identity, it takes a signing key, but like the inbox ID, like the inbox ID that you're using. Like in this client, lowercase c client, would know the inbox ID because because it has it on that class. But in a static world, it doesn't know it because it doesn't have it. So then you have to pass it in. So it's just kind of a difference between how much state the function has versus not have. I mean, your hands are kind of tied in this scenario where you've reached your limit and you kind of have to use the static ones. But ideally, they have another live installation and you can give them this much better experience. But you have to handle the case where they don't have another live installation because it's not guaranteed. People do destructive things, deleting apps feverishly. The really odd thing about this is that 200 um, is that so say you reach your like 5 out of 5 limit, and that means that your identity updates table is, let's say it's 5 for simplicity. So your identity updates table has 5 entries and your installations has 5 entries. Then you call revoke installations because you want to add another. So now your installations have 4, and now your identity updates is 6. And then you call add because you want to get back up to that installation. Now you have 5, and now you have 7. So the identity updates is just continually incrementing forward forever until you get to 256. Whereas the number of installations that you have, active installations that you have, can be 4, can be 5, can be 3, can be 0, can be 2. This number is like infinitely evolving based on your actions, but as these actions take place, this is just steadily incrementing, drumming towards 256 until you get there.